Day for the community of Coral Springs and beyond, with the Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen set to be laid to rest today.
Many will gather for a celebration of her life as questions still remain over her tragic murder. Local 10's Isabella Martin joining us live from Coral Springs with more. Isabella.
Hey, good morning. Well, it was just over 2 weeks ago that Nancy Metayer was shot and killed, police say, by her husband. Now this morning, friends, family, and the Coral Springs community are going to come to Church by the Glades to celebrate her life.
This afternoon, the community will gather to say goodbye to Coral Springs Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer. Friends, family, and those she impacted preparing to honor her life. Details from police help piece together what happened.
Break down the door and go down, whatever means.
Ma'am, I understand that we're worried about her and we're trying to find her, but we can't just break down the door. We have to have a reason.
A desperate 911 call from family trying to get help inside her home.
I'm going to give you a reason. Okay, my nephew, her husband, came to my house this morning and told me that he did something to her.
Okay, her husband?
Is he alive? He said no.
Stephen Bowen, her husband, now charged with her murder. Police say Metayer was found shot, wrapped in a comforter and garbage bags. Records show officers had been called to the home several times. One for a disturbance, with some details still not public.
And who will fight to make government more accountable.
And if there were signs of trouble, those close to her say she kept them private.
What we see is the escalation happens between rounds of these different incidences of abuse. So the quicker we can get law enforcement to the scene to understand what the issue is, the more seriously we can deal with the perpetrator and the abuser.
Lawmakers now pushing for more protections, including tools that could silently alert police.
You call that number, nobody picks up. If somebody grabs the phone from you, there's nobody on the other end for them to talk to. And then the police geolocate you, and it's an emergency panic button, and they come to your house.
The viewing starts at 11:30, followed by a celebration of life at 12:30 at Church by the Glades in Coral Springs. The service will be live streamed, and family is asking for privacy inside.
And again, if you'd like to come, that viewing starts at 11:30 here at Church by the Glades, with the celebration of life starting at 12:30. For now, reporting live in Coral Springs, I'm Isabella Martin, Local 10 News. Right now, many of Nancy Metayer's loved ones and community are right inside Church by the Glades, and also dozens are actually waiting to enter into the church. Take a look at that. You know, she was brought here earlier this morning in a procession escorted by Coral Springs Police and BSO as the community begins to say goodbye. And if you take a look right over here, I'm going to have my photographer pan, you can see a flag hanging at the entrance honoring her life.
The best memory I have of Nancy was, it was last week, and I went to go shake one of our commissioners' hands, and she goes, "Where's my hug?" And I gave her a big hug.
She was my friend. And if I am being honest, I am still trying to process how we got here.
She had a rare gift of making people feel known, seen, valued, and deeply understood.
Lord, I remember meeting her at a community rally when she pulled down her mask in 2020 and smiled and hugged me. I thank you for her life. I thank you for her vision. I thank you she wanted to leave this world a better place. So Father, right now we have two complete sets of emotions. We're saddened, we grieve, we hurt, especially the family. At the same time, we celebrate a remarkable woman and a legacy of life and love. So Lord, as we navigate today, these two sets of emotions, Father, I pray you'd help us frame this correctly, that we'd avoid the idea that this was a waste, the way her life came to an end. It was a tragedy. It saddens us, but a waste.
Good afternoon. Today, I stand before you alongside my colleagues, Mayor Scott Brook, Commissioner Sean Serra, Commissioner Joe McHugh, former Commissioner Joy Carter, who served with Nancy for much of her time in office, City Manager Catherine Givens, and City Attorney John Hearn, on behalf of the City of Coral Springs. And if you're wondering why I'm reading a prepared speech, is because I can hear Nancy. Listen, you got to prepare. So, but I want to make sure I send my friend off the right way. She was our partner in service, and she was my friend. And if I am being honest, I am still trying to process how we got here. Like so many of you, I am still in a daze. Because this was not supposed to be the moment where we gather to say goodbye. We were supposed to be celebrating her leadership, celebrating everything she had accomplished and everything that was still ahead. Friend, my partner in this work, we were extremely like-minded. And in many ways, my big sister. I always had to remind her she was 2 months and 2 days older than me. And you know, when you have two young, ambitious black people inhabiting a space that wasn't originally made for you, sometimes there was a little competition, but that's exactly what Simplers do at home. We served side by side, and over time, something deeper formed, a bond that people do not always see, but one that you feel. We had our rhythm. We rolled together to a lot of different events. And if there was ever a toast involved, because Nancy had to make sure she was ready to start the event, she would grab a beer. But I already knew that beer was coming to me. So if you see any pictures from
Thank you, Commissioner, for those powerful and heartfelt words. I pray we all remember just how Nancy lived. God bless you.
I get to do this. Ça c'est pour les amis moi, famille moi. When we were 15, I had the distinct privilege of being Nancy's first political opponent. Picture it, it's the Bush years. Before we had a black president, and everybody was knucking and bucking and ready to fight. And one of the most popular girls in school is running against you, the slightly awkward class nerd, to be vice president of your 10th grade class. We campaigned for weeks, and the stakes were high on election day, okay? And I broke a sweat riding my bike up to Cold Springs Charter School that morning, thinking maybe, just maybe, I had some hope. Well, then I saw Nancy, the skilled politician that she was, passing out warm Krispy Kreme donuts to all our adoring classmates, asking for their vote. Neighbor and dedicated public servant whose years were defined by an unwavering commitment to equality and to justice. Nancy was the eldest daughter of Miss and Marley Metayer, a consummate Virgo, and over 38 years, 6 months, and 28 days, transformed from a radiant first-generation Haitian-American child into a self-actualized, profoundly brilliant black woman and servant leader, exemplifying what it means to live a life of selfless service, integrity, resilience, and humanity. Nancy would go on to graduate with honors and a full academic scholarship to the illustrious Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University.
You were the word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ.
day of the funeral arrived with a quiet heaviness that seemed to settle over the entire community. From early morning, people began gathering, dressed in black and muted colors, their faces reflecting a mixture of grief, disbelief, and reflection. Nancy Metayer Bowen was being laid to rest, and for many, the reality of that moment still hadn't fully sunk in. She had been a visible presence, a leader who showed up, spoke out, and connected with people on a personal level. Now, the same community she once served stood together to say goodbye. Inside the service, the atmosphere was filled with emotion. Family members, friends, and colleagues took turns sharing memories, each story adding another layer to the life she had lived. They spoke of her dedication, her warmth, and the way she carried responsibility with both strength and compassion. Some moments brought soft smiles, others brought tears, but all of them reminded everyone of what had been lost. It wasn't just a public figure being remembered, but a person whose absence left a space that could not easily be filled. Yet, beneath the heartfelt tributes, there was an undercurrent that could not be ignored. As much as the day was about honoring her life, it also brought forward the reality that her story had ended in a way no one expected. The sense of closure that funerals often bring felt incomplete, as if something important was still unresolved. And as you follow this story, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, because sharing stories like this helps keep important conversations alive. By the time the final prayers were said and the room fell into silence, it was clear that while Nancy had been laid to rest, the questions surrounding her passing were still very much present. As the service came to an end and people slowly stepped outside, the air felt different, heavier, quieter, filled with thoughts that no one seemed ready to say out loud. Small groups formed in the parking lot and along the walkways, voices low, conversations careful. The funeral had brought everyone together to honor Nancy Metayer Bowen, but it also reminded them of how much remained unresolved. It wasn't just grief people were carrying anymore, it was uncertainty. Friends and colleagues exchanged memories, often pausing as reality set back in. Some spoke about her leadership, others about personal moments that revealed who she was beyond her public role. There were gentle smiles, brief laughter, but they didn't last long. Almost every conversation seemed to drift back to the same place, the unanswered questions. How did things reach this point? Was there something that had been missed? These weren't accusations, just reflections, the kind that come when something feels incomplete. For many, the hardest part was reconciling the image they knew with the situation being discussed in reports and updates. It created a tension between memory and reality, between who she was to them and what had happened. The more they talked, the clearer it became that the funeral had not brought closure. Instead, it had opened a space for deeper reflection, one that would not be easily filled. And if you're following this story and trying to understand every layer, don't forget to share this video and subscribe, because awareness matters more than ever in moments like this. As the crowd gradually dispersed and people returned to their lives, they carried with them not just the memory of Nancy, but the lingering feeling that her story was not yet complete. In the days that followed the funeral, the silence left behind began to fill with renewed attention on the case itself. The emotional weight of the service still lingered, but now it was joined by a growing need for clarity. People turned back to the details, to the timeline, to the updates that had slowly been unfolding even before the day of her burial. Conversations that had started in quiet corners after the service now continued in homes, on phones, and across the community, all centered on the same question: what really happened? Investigators continued their work, carefully reviewing evidence, statements, and prior reports connected to the case. Each step was deliberate, each piece of information examined with precision. While some details had already been made public, much of the process remained behind the scenes, leaving people to wait, to speculate, and to hope that the truth would eventually come together in a clear and undeniable way. It was a reminder that while funerals can bring emotional closure, they do not end the search for answers. For those who had just said their goodbyes, the shift back to investigation felt both necessary and difficult. Grief was still fresh, but so was the desire for accountability. The two emotions existed side by side, shaping how people followed each new development. Some revisited earlier reports, trying to piece together the story themselves, while others chose to step back, overwhelmed by the complexity of it all. And if you're still here, trying to follow every detail as it unfolds, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, because staying informed is part of understanding stories like this. As more information continued to surface, one thing became increasingly clear. The funeral may have marked the end of a life, but it had not brought an end to the search for truth. As the weeks moved forward, the case began to take on a new shape, shifting from mourning into a process that demanded patience and attention. The legal system slowly stepped in, bringing structure to what had once felt like a flood of emotion and unanswered questions. Updates came in small pieces: court proceedings scheduled, statements reviewed, evidence prepared, each one reminding the public that the path to clarity is rarely immediate. For many, this stage felt slower, quieter, but no less important. At the same time, the community continued to hold on to Nancy Metayer Bowen's memory in meaningful ways. Events were organized, moments of silence observed, and conversations about her work carried forward. Her name didn't fade after the funeral. Instead, it became part of ongoing discussions about leadership, impact, and the kind of legacy she left behind. People spoke not just about how she died, but about how she lived, and what that meant for those who had known her or been inspired by her. Still, the questions lingered. Even as the legal process unfolded, there was a sense that understanding the full picture would take time. Each development brought a mix of hope and frustration, hope that answers were getting closer, and frustration that they weren't fully there yet. It's in moments like these that patience becomes part of the story, even when it's the hardest thing to hold on to. And if this story has stayed with you, don't forget to like and share, because keeping conversations like this alive helps ensure they're not forgotten. As attention remained fixed on what would happen next, it became clear that the journey toward answers was ongoing, shaped by both the steady pace of the legal process and the lasting impact of the life that had been lost. In the end, the funeral was not a conclusion, but a moment suspended between what had been lost and what was still unfolding. Life in the community slowly began to move forward, but not in the same way as before. There was a quiet awareness now, a lingering sense that something significant had changed. Nancy Metayer Bowen's presence was gone, yet her influence remained in conversations, in memories, and in the spaces she once filled with purpose and energy. People continued to speak her name, not just in grief, but in recognition of the mark she left behind. At the same time, the case itself continued its steady progression through the legal system. Each update, no matter how small, carried weight. For those closely following, there was a constant balance between waiting and wondering, between trusting the process and wanting immediate answers. The questions that had surfaced from the very beginning had not disappeared. If anything, they had become more defined, more focused. What truly led to that moment? Could anything have changed the outcome? These were the thoughts that lingered long after the funeral ended. For many, healing became a personal journey rather than a collective event. Some found comfort in remembering Nancy's achievements, others in advocating for awareness and change, and some simply in holding on to the lessons this story revealed. It wasn't about finding a perfect ending, because stories like this rarely offer one. Instead, it was about understanding, about reflection, and about ensuring that her life was remembered for more than the circumstances of her death. And as you reach the end of this story, take a moment to reflect on everything you've heard. If this story has stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because keeping stories like this alive helps ensure they're not forgotten. In the end, while Nancy Metayer Bowen was laid to rest, The search for truth, understanding, and lasting impact continues beyond the final goodbye.